I'm an architect, a son, a father, and a brother. On June 7th, 2008, I was going to have dinner with my younger brother, Paul Haden. That afternoon, as I finished presenting at a design workshop here in Vancouver, I started to receive phone calls telling me that Paul had gone missing. I drove with his girlfriend to his 3-story stucco walk-up. As we climbed the stairs, we noticed a terrible chemical stench. His apartment door was blocked by a heavy object. That object was my brother's body. He died while trying to get out. This is Paul. You'll see color photos of him and our family. The black and white images are from my friend Lincoln Clark's photo essay of women of Vancouver's downtown east side, Canada's poorest neighborhood. Many are heroin addicts and some are dead. Paul was born because my parents were worried that the large gap between me and my next older brother would leave me lonely and spoiled. We played together all our lives, everywhere from the woods of eastern Ontario to the bars of East Vancouver. When he died, he was a well-liked and much respected lab technologist at a local hospital. He loved science and had previously worked researching marine sources of antibiotics. He was a deeply generous guy, a great cook, a better uncle than I am, and incredibly funny. He was also a manufacturer of illegal drugs, principally MDMA, also known as ecstasy. Paul was not a drug dealer in the usual sense, he was an activist. He believed that drug use was, like prostitution, an ingrained aspect of any advanced culture that could never be wiped out by prohibition. In his view, the greatest harm in our culture's relationships with drugs was the absence of a safe supply and lack of honest information about responsible use and risks. This harm is a direct result of a system that treats matters of drugs and addiction as criminal justice matters, not as issues of health and education. Put another way, he knew the kids were going to do E at raves no matter how many cops we have in the street. And he thought those kids should know what they were getting. He died while purifying 2.2 kilos of dirty street ecstasy in his kitchen. The beakers of chemicals boiled on his stovetop for 24 hours before we discovered his body. Everything in his apartment was destroyed as a toxic risk. We couldn't even get the family photos from his hard drive. Although he was committed to safety of supply for ecstasy users, my brother was no hero. He loved the juice of illegal activity. He lied to me for years in telling me he was out of the business. His death forced his neighbors to evacuate their homes for 2 days, and that is inexcusable. It's hard when someone you've loved your entire life has passions that are illegal and dangerous. Let me use another family example. Our father was a successful psychiatrist. He was also an alcoholic. Without discounting the terrible costs of alcoholism, because his drug of choice was scotch, of which there is a reliable and clean supply, he was able to have a great career and raise a loving family. Had his drug of choice been heroin, I would not be here. There is a direct line between the death of my brother, at least 10 recent and completely avoidable deaths in Western Canada caused by toxic, dirty ecstasy, millions of lives ruined by incarceration, gang violence, and more than 50,000 vicious drug war deaths in Mexico and Central America. As creators of the current system of prohibition, those deaths are our responsibility. We have blood on our hands. Let me go back to family. The worst part about the terrible night that my brother died wasn't being stripped and decontaminated while shaking with grief. It wasn't dealing with the police or dealing with the media. It was telling our mother. When we told her that her youngest son was dead, the third of her 6 children that she had lost, she began a conversation that I found odd at the time. She started talking about a trip to Ottawa months away where she was going to see me receive a major design award. I invited her because I never would have been an architect without my mom's years of support. but I couldn't understand why it was important to talk about the trip at the moment of family catastrophe. Later, I understood that in the face of darkness, she needed some light to move towards. Later still, she told me that she was too old to ever get over the death of Paul, but that it did not need to ruin everything in her life, and she could still contribute to the world with her passion for community. For me, speaking openly about my brother and advocating for changes in drug policy is my way of holding that passion. I'm not a drug policy expert. My field is architecture. But I and my family and countless others around the globe have had a direct and painful experience of the impact of misguided drug policy. And I believe an important step towards change is when people of personal experience and credibility, but who are not expert in an issue, begin to speak out. The supporters of the current policy of prohibition have had their time to make it work, and they have failed. Drug interdiction is not effective and it's not ethical. A strategy guided by public health best practices that makes substances carefully available but does not promote their use is one that's proven to reduce use, abuse, addiction, and the terrible social consequences of prohibition. I want my son, Paul Griffin Haden, to grow up in a world that more responsibly handles this hard issue. My wife Holly and I gifted our son with the name Paul, a reminder both of my brother's great joy in living and that a death that was so tragic for us can be transformative for others. Thank you.